In 2004, British scientists in Manchester first extracted graphene from graphite, the material used to make pencils, and they won the Nobel Prize in Physics for Advancement in 2010. Graphene's potential is enormous. It's 200 times stronger than steel and yet incredibly light. Currently, graphene is being used in sensor chips to sniff out or detect chemicals in the air and disease enzymes in blood. These silicon chips are dotted with thin flecks of graphene. The flecks are transparent and only one atom thick, so applying them to silicon chips is an involved process. Graphene is man-made in labs like this one, using a process known as chemical vapor deposition. A technician slides a capsule containing a copper foil sheet into a furnace. He screws a cap on the end of the capsule and shuts the furnace lid. The machine is then switched on, and all the oxygen is driven out of the chamber by argon gas. When the furnace reaches 1000 degrees Celsius, the technician introduces methane gas and hydrogen. A reaction occurs that deposits graphene onto the foil. The graphene that's produced is so thin that it's transparent and can't be seen with the naked eye. Next, tiny gold contacts are applied to a silicon wafer and submerged in solvent to rinse off the excess gold. The remaining gold bits on the wafer are the electrical contacts. A dip in acetone cleans off more of the lingering loose flakes. And a final rinse in alcohol removes the rest. Using a diamond-tip scribe, the technician scores the silicon wafer and breaks it along the score lines, creating rectangular chips. Another technician deposits liquid plastic onto the transparent graphene that's on the copper foil. He locks the foil in a machine called a spin coater. It spins at 3000 RPM. This causes the plastic to spread evenly across the graphene film on the foil. It also accelerates the curing of the plastic. Then, the process of separating the plastic-coated graphene from the copper foil begins. He clips a wire to a set of tweezers. Using the tweezers, he picks up a small piece of the plastic graphene and copper sandwich and plunges it into water. The tweezers apply an electrical charge through the copper. This causes bubbles to form in the water. These bubbles lift the graphene and plastic film away from the copper. The graphene now only has its plastic backing to cling to. And the plastic-backed graphene rectangle is then gently retrieved from the beaker of water. It's immersed into a series of solutions to remove contaminants. In the last beaker, the rectangle is slid off and allowed to float freely. A silicon chip is picked up with tweezers and used to retrieve the floating plastic-backed graphene. And that graphene now sits on the silicon chip. After taping metal stencils over 3 of the graphene-covered chips, they're suspended above gold pellets in a machine known as the evaporator. A large bell jar is placed over the evaporator before a technician turns on the heat. As the gold evaporates, a vacuum pulls it to the stencils and the exposed graphene, and it adheres. Then the gold cools and solidifies. The stencils are then removed from the chips, revealing gold horizontal runners between the contacts. The chips are then transferred to a plasma etcher. Plasma gas floods the chamber and strips off all the graphene that isn't protected by gold. Only the gold contacts and the gold-covered graphene runners remain on the chip. Solvent is used to dissolve the plastic backing. It takes the protective gold with it, leaving only the graphene behind. We now have a completed graphene sensor chip. It's time to test its sensory powers. A technician exposes the chip to antibodies for a certain disease protein. The antibodies from the pipette attach to the surface of the graphene. She tests the signal from the chip to confirm that it's detecting the protein correctly. And with testing complete, the graphene chip is ready to sniff out chemicals and diseases wherever it can find them. But that's just the beginning for this amazing discovery.